Senate Chamber. Signed. 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 Committee Room 30. 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 Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, signed.
Thank you. Thanks. Now, so the first item on the agenda is the appointment of a temporary chairperson. Members, basically how this operates is that I would invite members to nominate someone to be our temporary chair because we're missing our chair and deputy chair today. There has to be a nominator, a seconder. I'll ask the member if they're happy to take the role. If they are, and there are no other nominations, that's grand. If there are other nominations, valid nominations, then there will be an election, and it is as simple as that. So can I ask members, does anyone wish to nominate someone to take the chair?
Nominate David Honifer, please.
Do we have a seconder?
I already seconded.
Okay, so that is a valid nomination. Are there any other nominations? No, there are not. That being the case, I'll invite Mr. Honeyford to take the chair. Now, members, can I, because Mr. Honeyford has not been briefed at all, can we take a break for about just 5 minutes, and I will have a little chat with him about what's coming up, if that's okay. So we will suspend proceedings, if that's acceptable.
Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, sound. 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 Committee Room 30, sound.
All good. So we're back in open session, Chair.
Open sessions are here, thank you, and welcome to the Economy Committee. Just for me, first of all, thank you very much for their confidence that I could actually chair this, so appreciate that. It actually shows right across the parties that we all want the same thing. We all want the economy to grow, and we can work together to do that, so I appreciate it. Send best wishes to Philip and to Gary. Those are the first item in the thing is apologies, and the apologies I have from Philip and Gary. There's nothing else, so we'll move on to declarations of interest. Anybody got anything to declare? No. And then move on to Chairperson's business. So we had an informal meeting last week with the Committee of Finance with the representatives of the Chartered Accountants of Ireland in respect to the corporation tax. So the clerk has circulated that summary note, and just one, is that agreed? Everybody agree with that? Everybody, anything to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree, and actually I should have declared my husband's a member of the Accountants Ireland, Chartered Accountants Ireland. The one ask that they had asked was that we kind of do a bit more work around data on Northern Ireland's fiscal position, and I wonder if as a committee that's something we could seek from NISRA, or just kind of if there's anything we can get a bit more information on, and from them on exactly what sort of data it is they're looking for.
Chair, that's really for the Finance Committee. So the committee's interest was around the impact on the economy, but devolution of tax raising powers, etc., is really a Finance Committee. So there's a really good Fiscal Commission report about this, which the previous Finance Minister commissioned. It tells you all sorts of stuff about the data, about VAT and all sorts of good stuff. So it's really for our colleagues in Finance.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll read that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything? Grace, yeah, go ahead.
Just not on that issue. Do you want
Oh
to
no,
raise
here
something?
with a wee bit
Okay,
more lesson.
that's grand.
Yeah. So, are we all content then if we to schedule another meeting into the future with and have a follow up to that? And is that agreed? Are we happy
Yeah.
to do that? Yeah. So happy to do that. And then I wanted to raise one thing, which is all of us have a lot of correspondence with hospitality and with hotels over the last sort of couple of days. I was wondering, should we have them in just a brief and to give us a briefing just of the industry, where they are, and the impact on the economy, but how we actually can potentially help and see. Sinead, yeah?
Yeah, Chair, just on that, I'm sure everybody has had the same calls that we all have had, particularly from the hospitality industry. I suppose Reval 2026 is having a real impact on the hospitality. I think, without a doubt, the large majority of the hospitality sector have had a significant increase because the COVID-19 discounts have been removed, and they've been removed all in one go, and there's been far too emphasis on the turnover of the businesses in order to get to the reval, and turnover is just really distorting it completely, because we all know prices have gone up, so therefore turnover has gone up, but costs are absolutely hammering the hospitality interests and this matters to everybody. There's nobody that will not be hit by this, because our hospitalities are actually the heartbeat of the economy here. It's about tourism, and it's about just a sense of community. And we've had 3 hospitality businesses that have said that they're going to close. They're all within a mile of the city centre, and that's just the start of it. And that's nothing to do with the actual rates coming in. And in Derry, like, it's between 55 and 86%. The hoteliers are going to experience the increase, and the independent pubs, they're hanging on. They are literally hanging on, and they're so vital to our communities. And it's really important that we hear from them, and it's really important that we ask the Minister for the Economy as well, what assessment has she made that this impact, like, there's 75,000 people that actually work in this industry. And a lot of these are independents. They're not big chains. It's not like England pubs with big chains. These are really small, independent, family-owned, outlets that really offer something back to the community as well. So I think it's important that we get the Minister engaged with this reval, and we get the industry in just to talk us through what the impact is going to be.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I agree entirely with what Sinead has said. Any of us that have engaged with the industry, there's huge anxiety levels now as to what it means. I think we have rightly had the conversation time and time again at this committee about the state of our local high streets. And I don't know if it's just in my own constituency. I certainly believe it's not. It's beyond that it is actually our bar restaurants that are actually keeping those minor towns afloat. And in the information that I have received, this reval will result in 9% increase for retail, 26% supermarkets, and then we go to the real extreme, which is 57% increase for pubs and an 85% increase for hotels. The model's not working, particularly the model where we're seeing this judged on turnover rather than profitability and not inclusive of debts. We know many of these restaurants, and particularly those that have transitioned even from a traditional, maybe a rural pub in towards more of a restaurant offering, they've had huge significant investments. It's not being taken on board. So I would back the call to get the industry in. If Sinead's proposal is, and I would certainly back this, that we ask for the Economy Minister to do an economic impact assessment on the current model as to if this was to go ahead, I think that's a very good option. And if it was the will of the committee, I do believe we should also write to the Minister for Finance to put on record our concerns as a committee as to what will be the knock-on impact here in Northern Ireland. It's not good enough to blame others in this instance. This is a devolved matter, and we need to ensure that this the rating system is fair for those businesses on the high street. So that's just a couple of points that I would have to add to that.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to second Jonathan's proposal to write, as well as a committee, to the Minister. I also think if the committee is willing to hear from the food to go hospitality sector, which is the coffee shops, the change, I mean, an integral part of our high streets too, those small businesses literally hanging on as well because of the impact of increasing prices, and a 6-week notice of such draconian increases is really unfair on those businesses. We need to recognise what they bring to our economy, and particularly in border areas. Gemma is also in my constituency from Anna South Tyrone. We look at trying to attract tourism in with the Hidden Heartlands initiative. How can you do that when the hotels are being given an 85% rates increase? So I think it'd be vital that we get an impact assessment and speak to the Minister. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Gemma, sorry, I didn't see her. Gemma, sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your new role. No, I'd just like to say I know many businesses are concerned, and I have been contacted by them as well. But as the Finance Minister said in the Chamber on Monday, if businesses are rightly concerned, they have up until the 1st of April to contact LPS with their concerns. And we're discussing this in the Finance Committee later, so I'm kind of I don't really know what committee I'm in at the minute. But just, for businesses that are watching, that they have until the 1st of April to engage with LPS on their estimates.
Yeah, thank you. Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, just to echo what Gemma said, I mean, I think obviously we want to do all we can to support business. I'm conscious the Finance Committee are doing this, so I'd be a bit reluctant to go ahead with those proposals and kind of supersede what the Finance Committee are doing. I'd be much more in favour of allowing the Finance Committee to do that, and then we review what they've done and if there's anything that we can do to support that. But I'd be much more in favour of allowing that to happen.
So what are we say? What are the? Yeah.
Chair, could I then propose a joint meeting between the Finance Minister and the Economy Minister, that we can address it with them both jointly?
Sorry, I have no problem with us having meetings with whatever minister.
I think that
I just think it would be appropriate for, as I've suggested, for the committee to write to the Finance Minister. We do write to other ministers, we have before, on education issues as well, just to say that we are concerned as a committee about the potential impact on the industry in this. I don't think that's a hard ask.
A lot of this sits within finance, so we need to agree totally. We need to let the Finance Committee do what they do, but we also need to look at the economy part of this to look at it. And it's
that's the angle.
That's the bit. So yeah. So are we agreeing if the proposal, Sinead, what were you proposing?
So I'm proposing that we ask the Economy Minister, has she done an assessment, an impact assessment on the current reval 2026, and what it would mean particularly to the tourism and hospitality sectors in which she has the lead role.
So are we happy that we do that we write to the Economy Minister, and then are we happy that Jonathan's proposing then that we write to say
expressing our concern at the impact for the economy here if these go ahead?
I just think that I understand the premise here, but I think that what we're doing is potentially stepping on the toes of the Finance Committee, and I think that it would be remiss of us not to allow them to make a decision today, and I'm happy that we review that next week. But I think, in terms of what Sinead's saying, looking at what we've done with an economy, or what can be done with an economy is no problem, but I am reluctant for us to try and overstep what's being done in finance. So I do think that we would be better placed. I think it would be more pragmatic if we actually waited till the Finance Committee made a decision on that and then reviewed that subsequently.
Whilst I understand the premise of the argument, this is not precedence we're setting. I remember whenever we're having discussions around higher education, for example, we write to other ministers. I would still stand that we write to the Finance Minister expressing concerns about the economic impact this will have on local businesses, particularly pubs and hotels in our respective constituencies. I don't think there's no harm in doing that, and I'd keep that proposal on the table. Sure.
Chair, the bottom line is, the Economy Committee is only just looking at and evaluating the reval. The reval isn't coming from the Department of Finance, and we as an Economy Committee are concerned about what that system is going to do to the economy here, and particularly we're a small business economy, and how will we be able to withstand or the impact of the rises. So it's totally right that we have to ask the Minister, has she done an assessment on it?
I'm going to bring Kate in and then we'll summarise.
So I support writing to both ministers, and I think in relation to the Finance Minister, he was very clear during question time that the process was right, and he can respond and say that the same thing again. I think for me, my concern from what came out of that question time was actually the communication around it, and a lot of businesses were shocked by it. So the process may well be correct, and there may be people who have had the wrong valuation and they have time to adjust that. But what we're hearing in our constituencies is that businesses were shocked, they were impacted by it. And so I think just getting a better understanding of communication, what is being done to engage with businesses in the interim, but also kind of an assessment of how the communication process went, I think would be useful, and that is related to the economy.
Okay. Ask Peter to summarise then.
In summary then, members, I think, keep me right now, the committee has agreed to take further evidence from Hospitality Ulster, Pubs Northern Ireland and the food to go sector, so hopefully the member has a contact, she'll share that with me, so that's okay. You're also content to write to the Minister for the Economy encouraging her to undertake an economic impact assessment on the hospitality and tourism industry in particular. So that's all okay. So then the question is, do you also want to write to the Finance Minister indicating the committee's concerns and just asking about the communication that has been held with the relevant businesses in terms of the impact on their profitability?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Are we agreed on?
I mean, I think, look, the Finance Minister set out very clearly what businesses can do to look at this, that the fact that the process is accessible until the 1st of April. And my understanding is that there's been 16 months of notice of reval. So, I mean, I just think that what we should be doing as an Economy Committee is actually making that clear and is setting out that this process, that the businesses can respond and can ask. I think John set out 4 separate steps in that process, of which businesses can ask for a review. So, I mean, I just think that we're potentially coming out of this committee today and leaving businesses feeling that there's actually no recourse in this, or that there's no options here, and that's absolutely not the case. So I think that we need to put on record the fact that, you know, the Minister has made very, very apparent and very clear what the solutions here are, and I just think that we're potentially sending out the wrong message.
I honestly don't think that is the case, but listen, happy. Gemma, do you want to come in and say?
Yeah, Chair, just to say, you know, if individual members wanted to write to the Finance Minister and ask those questions, I'm sure they're actually mandated to do so, but I'm not sure if it has to come from the Economy Committee, because, as I said earlier, like, the Finance Committee are working on this, so we're getting evidence on it later on. So, you know, I just don't think that it's appropriate to come and maybe as individual MLAs on the Economy Committee, but I don't know if it has to come from the committee itself.
Yeah, you're supposed to all go easy on me today, like, but can we go? We'll put this. Just go to a vote and then see if we propose. So
there's a motion. Then it's just to the other bits are agreed. This is just a motion on writing to the Finance Minister, copying to the Committee for Finance, just seeking, intimating the committee's concerns and just seeking information on the communications with businesses and recommending that that be enhanced, I think members are saying. So I think that's the motion.
Yes.
So members
if you're agreeing, whatever.
raise their hands. So that's one. Sorry, raise your hand, including yourselves. If you wish to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And against? There's 1. And that's 2. So it's 5 in favour, 2 against. So that motion is passed. Okay?
Okay,
Will
no
do.
bother. Next item then is draft minutes. Your pack, refer to page 8 and you'll find a copy of the draft minutes of the committee meeting on the 21st of January. Everybody content with the draft minutes? Are accurate and complete record of the committee last week? Content? Yeah. Agreed? Yeah. So matters arising. Any members got anything they want to raise? Jonathan?
Thanks, Chair, and I did raise it with the clerk that I was going to raise this matter. I'm not going to dwell on it today, but there was an issue that I raised last week, particularly the US financial services company Cantor Fitzgerald and the 300 jobs that didn't come. I was very specific at the committee that we wanted to see the meeting notes and other associated interactions with the company. We were assured by the Permanent Secretary and the Minister that that would happen. I want to express concern that a copy of that meeting note was sent to the BBC on Thursday. Now, I'm not content with the extent of the note. It's 4 bullet points. It doesn't even mention the 300 jobs. But the more concerning point that I want to raise for the committee is that we, as a committee, were not sent that meeting note until Friday, sent by the clerk at 13 minutes to 7 that night. The clerk had actually received it. He was very efficient at that time of the night, was at 6:30 on a Friday night. I think that's totally appalling. I think it shows a discourtesy to the scrutiny committee that it raised the questions. Why on earth would we be being sent something like that late on a Friday evening, yet they'd already sent it out to BBC journalists the day before with no acknowledgement of the committee or no foresight from the committee? I think it's a huge discourtesy to our business. I have further questions surrounding this and I'll certainly keep going with them, but I want that put back to the department that is a sign of discourtesy. In no way should anybody outside this committee be learning about something like that whilst the committee's in the dark after raising the questions.
Rick, you want?
I mean, as Gemma pointed out the last time around, individual members can write to the department, have the ability to write to this department, to any other department. I think that we have a very clear programme of business in this committee, and we really do not have time for these consistent distractions from it. For me, this is the fact that you don't like the Minister's position, and that's fine. That's your prerogative. The Minister has a position, and that's her prerogative. But there's no evidence for this. I'm not sure where the evidence has come from. We're not having a rerun of The View here. There's been no evidence presented as to where the claims came from, the basis of it, and I've seen no evidence, so I don't think it's the position of this committee to be going into that. If you have concerns, you're free to raise them, but we're in a situation here where your own party have talked about when you were presented with 40,000 job losses of Brexit, you didn't care about that. We're dealing with the local growth fund this week, 400 job losses potentially in the community and voluntary sector, and I've seen no concern about that. So I really think it's very rich to be talking about that. This is about the fact that if you want to raise something, please raise it yourself, but I don't think it's a job for this committee, to be honest. I really don't. And I've seen no evidence to do that. I don't think that we need to be taking up our time. We've a really busy legislative programme, 8 pieces of legislation to put forward in this mandate as opposed to 1 which was brought forward in the last 10 years. So to be honest, I think if you want to raise them, please raise them yourself, but can we get on with committee business?
Well, I have 2 other people to come in.
Chair, no, I would support Jonathan's comments because I do think procedurally it had been raised here, and to find it going to a media outlet, that source, I think it does call into question procedurally what has been happening. So I would support Jonathan's comments. Thank you.
Kate?
I just think this has become incredibly dramatic, and I personally haven't seen the evidence, and so I'm skeptical about it based on the note, but it was a request that came from committee, and we didn't get it until afterwards. So I think let's just take the drama out of it. There was a request that came from committee. We can write, we can ask about process. I'm happy to support kind of a request that we see information that is requested before the media does, but I also just want to put on record that I think we need to focus on how we grow our economy, and I haven't seen the evidence for this yet, so I don't want to labour any more time on it.
In summary then, members, I can record in the minutes members' objections, or the members wish to push this to a vote, as they're perfectly entitled to do. Is that what they want to do? So,
just for clarity, I will take up further my points of scrutiny surrounding this issue. It's about jobs and the economy, so therefore it's pertinent to this committee. This is the scrutiny committee, so I'm entitled to scrutinise the Minister and the Department on what I perceive as job losses. My point for today is literally around the issue that this committee, who is the scrutiny committee, requested the minutes. We were told directly by the Minister and the Permanent Secretary that we would get them. To give them to outside outlets before a scrutiny committee is absolutely appalling. And I don't care what minister it is, I don't care what the issue is. If it's requested by the committee, that's your first priority, to ensure that your scrutiny committee is informed of an issue that they have made. So my proposal is that we write in those terms to the Permanent Secretary and the Minister. We need to check their card on this. We cannot have a case, whatever the issue is, that information is being sent to outside outlets before the committee.
I don't know if we have the evidence that they did do that.
But we do, because I have it here. So the department sent Peter, as Chair, clarified, at 16:31 on the 23rd of January. That was Friday.
18:31.
Yeah. He then forwarded that on to us at 16:47, which was quite efficient for that time of the night.
Well done, Peter.
And the BBC confirmed that they had it on Thursday afternoon/evening. That's the point.
Yeah, no.
So we do have the evidence about the correspondence.
We don't have the evidence that the department give it to the BBC. That's the bit.
Oh, we do. They officially said that on the record.
Okay. Patrick.
This is turning into an absolute pantomime. We're not trying to scrabble back to the fact that you couldn't present the evidence on the View last week. That's irrelevant to the work of this committee.
That's cheap
no,
shot.
sorry. I want to finish my point, Chair. So, this is about the work of this committee. If you have that issue, please raise it. Please raise it. But this is about the work of this committee. As Kate said, we have a lot to get through here. We want to develop the economy. If you have a point to raise, that's fine. But we don't need the committee to become involved in all of this pantomime. And to be honest, I think we have plenty to be getting on with about developing jobs, about building the economy. And that's what I want to do. I think this committee has seen enough distraction already today. Can we please get to the business?
And that's absolutely what I want to do. Listen, there's a different view. I've given everybody a chance to other view. Listen, we're going to have to bring this to a vote, because there's a proposal here that we have to deal with. So if we have the
proposal is on the process about how it was corresponded. Yeah. I'm not making comment on the other issue at this stage.
I just want to kind of my position. The process was not good. It's not a good look that a permanent secretary will sit here and we will make a direct request from him for evidence and not to be. And I have absolutely no evidence about the Cantor Fitzgerald. I don't know where you got your details from, Johnny, at all, and what's involved in it. But that's not what the vote is about today. The vote is only about a process where you ask a permanent secretary to disclose information, and instead of disclosing it to the committee, it's disclosed first to the BBC. That is not a good look for anybody. And if it was the Education Minister or the Justice Minister, it's not a good look, and it shouldn't happen.
Okay. We'll just go to a simple vote. Are we, she needs summarised. So I'll go. Are we anybody in support of writing to? Are you summarise exactly?
So, no. Just as you said, Chair, that the motion is to be writing to the Minister, recording the committee's concern at the discourtesy and seeking clarity on the process around the provision of this information. So, if that's the motion, then those in favour.
In favour.
Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those opposed. Is 2. It's 2 against. So it's the motion is passed. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. We're moving now to item 7. On your pack, we're going to receive evidence from the department officials in respect to feedback of the 2024 consultation on low carbon heat in residential buildings and the development of the Domestic Energy and Efficiency Heat Programme scheme. Your members, it's in your pack at page 17, and there's also a tabled paper from the department at department briefing at page 29. So I welcome Ryan White and Simon Miskelly. If I want to pass over to you, and you take it from here.
Thank you, Chair and members, and thanks for the introduction. I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to come along here today and present evidence on the responses provided to our consultation entitled Support for Low Carbon Heat in the Residential Sector. We're also keen to discuss the work we're progressing in the development of a domestic energy efficiency and low carbon heat programme, which represents a significant step forward for us as it begins to amalgamate several work streams and move into delivery. For broader context, the Executive's energy strategy commits to a pathway to replace high carbon heating sources with low and zero carbon alternatives in households. Subsequent action plan reports of the strategy have specified that proposals for a low carbon heating support will be developed, and the public consultation is an important step in this process to enable the development of a scheme and related regulations. The consultation closed last year with 107 responses received, alongside feedback provided through 2 online stakeholder engagement events. The analysis of the findings from this consultation has now been completed, with the government response report published on the department's website on Monday, the 26th of January, following notification to this committee. And the consultation in summary covered 5 main topics. So firstly, the types of low carbon heat technologies that should be considered eligible for support, building efficiency and building eligibility requirements, consumer considerations such as consumer protections and quality assurance, and financial assistance, what form that may take, and finally the development of the local supply chain and the skills development that will have to go around this. Throughout the consultation process, the heat policy team worked closely with external stakeholders through the establishment of a sector-specific advisory group. This group had representatives from the renewable heating industry and other related sectors. In addition to the stakeholder group, the team have engaged with industry analysts, voluntary groups, academia across government departments and ALBs to ensure the consultation is well informed and inclusive. So in tandem with the consultation process, my team have brought on board consultants from the Energy Saving Trust in the development of a design plan for the wider programme. This work has also included outcomes such as a detailed gap analysis and a benchmarking exercise, which will support the evidence base that goes behind our business case. The design plan is intended in setting, I suppose, those key scheme design parameters for future domestic support, and is on track to be published in the next couple of months. For the programme then, the key areas of focus are to reduce the amount that consumers spend on their energy bills through the energy transition, to prioritise home energy efficiency measures such as draft proofing, loft insulation and cavity wall insulation, where technical and financial viability are less restrictive than other interventions, to deliver reductions in energy consumption through improvements to home energy control systems and adopt different approaches to how we use energy in our homes, to replace high carbon fossil fuel heating sources with lower zero carbon alternatives, and to drive investment in the low carbon renewable energy economy whilst upskilling and growing the installer base and supply chain. Looking forward through this year, our work will involve bringing forward a business case, drafting scheme regulations and commencing the procurement process to bring on board a managed service provider who will manage the scheme for us. And we'll also work to establish a major project in the department to ensure that adequate governance and oversight are adopted in this process. Responses to the consultation we're here to discuss today are being used to inform decisions on the design, rules and guidance of this scheme. The overriding objective of this work is to deliver a new support scheme, which we've provisionally called the Domestic Energy Efficiency and Heat Pump Programme. So if we mention DEEHP today, you'll know what we're talking about. This programme will replace the Northern Ireland Sustainable Energy Programme, or NICEP as it's known, and it will be comparable to schemes operating elsewhere in the UK and Ireland, but tailored to our own unique circumstances. Finally, and just for clarity to the committee, we're currently working towards an anticipated launch of the support scheme in late 2027. As indicative timelines would suggest, this will take around 24 months to complete from this point, to complete procurement of this scale and with the resources available at this time. So we'd now like to welcome questions from the committee.
Well, listen, thank you very much. I'm going to pass over. Kate is first. I'll come at the end. Is that okay?
You always ask the energy questions.
I know.
First,
I just thought here today. I'll tell you. Go for it.
Thanks so much, Sharon. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, and I was really glad to see this because I have one constituent in particular who writes to me on about a monthly basis about the need for heat pumps. Can I ask a little bit about the skills work that's required and how confident you are it's there, or what needs to be done to kind of align it with the work?
Yeah, so I suppose this goes back a couple of years in the department. You'll be aware of the Green Skills Action Plan that the department have developed. I suppose the most recent work in that is that a number of subgroups have spawned out of that, focused on key areas from that. I suppose the Green Skills Action Plan focused in on 3 main areas, one of which is domestic retrofit. That includes insulation, low carbon heating technologies. So the subgroup is led by the Housing Executive, or the Home Energy Conservation Authority for the region, and our policy teams feed into that work. I suppose for us, the key thing here is about collaboration and timelines and making sure all of this lines up. Department for Communities are developing a scheme that is looking to launch around the same time as this scheme. We're keen that, I suppose, the skills requirements, the specification is the same across everything we do. So working really closely with Department for Communities, the Housing Executive, but also the Utility Regulator, who run the current NICEP programme, to, I suppose, look at what gaps that there potentially may be. And what we see, I suppose, emerging is offerings from FE colleges in terms of LCL levels, sort of 2 to 5 on low carbon heating and insulation. I suppose installations being, I suppose, some of the, the base level, I suppose, skills requirements that we will be looking to embed into the scheme. And really, for us, it's about making step changes here, raising the floor on what skills we have through our government intervention. And I suppose then looking, I suppose, further out towards the end of the decade, there's some work going on with regards to PAS 2035 and other standards that we can bring in to make, I suppose, a more comprehensive approach to how retrofit is coordinated and how, I suppose, those skills lead to proper quality assurance at the end.
That's really useful, thank you. And are councils having much of a role in this as well through DFC, or because I'm aware that different councils have, or maybe working in different areas. Belfast City Council, when I was on it, it was something that we talked about quite a lot. And just in terms of that skills base, they've been doing really innovative work there, and I wondered if there'd been a role with.
Yes, so I suppose Belfast City Council in particular have the retrofit hub that we would engage with, and I would engage with my counterpart in the council periodically just to make sure that everything's aligned. There are a couple of pilot programs that are being, I suppose, put forward in terms of whether or not an area-based approach could be taken to some of this, etc. So we're engaged with the councils in that. In terms of our work, we don't really see a role for the councils. We see a role for, I suppose, a managed service provider, and I suppose for those, that structure to manage then private sector contractors to deliver the work. I suppose in the past, DFC have been more linked in with councils on their affordable warmth scheme and used that, I suppose, to target, and that targeting was really focused around field poverty and things like that. So there may be an approach taken with councils that's probably more close with Department for Communities than it is with our scheme.
Thank you, and really good to hear the work with DFC. We hear so often about the silo working of departments, so that's it's good to hear that. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Anna?
Thank you and good morning. Thank you for coming to the committee this morning. I see in your papers it states the department's policy development is on support using its heat pump led. Can you let me know what steps the Department for the Economy is taking to raise public awareness of LPG and bio-LPG as part of a balanced energy mix, particularly for those rural areas that have problems having electrical connection to their heating systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would agree there's no one-size-fits-all solution here. And our holistic approach to, I suppose, development policy across multiple areas here have led us to this consultation, which we see as one piece of a jigsaw. But there's also been a call for evidence on biomethane in the last year or so, and a call for evidence on biofuels. And our government response report to biofuels was actually published on the department's website yesterday. So for us, I suppose this piece of the jigsaw that we're focused on here today is around looking at where capital grant type intervention could support the rollout of heat pumps. All of the evidence that we see suggests that electrification and heat pumps will play a foundational role in our transition to net zero, but we're very aware we have to get there. So there's a potential role in that transition for other forms of biofuels, and we're exploring that at the same time, although it is a little further behind in its policy development journey. In terms of biofuels more broadly, I guess to summarise quickly the findings of that report, they are faced again, there's cost challenges with every option here, but they're faced with, I suppose, sustainability of source from, they're faced with potential supply challenges to meet the demand, but we're also faced with massive cost challenges in that, a litre of liquid biofuel is over 2 times the cost of kerosene today. So I suppose our next steps on that policy development journey is, I suppose, taking our evidence and presenting it to the UK government, because they're actually running a consultation right now that's focused on alternative pathways, and it really does focus on rural communities and off the gas grid properties. So we're keen to speak to the UK government about, I suppose, their next steps, because some of the interventions that will actually support cost will be around reclassifying HVO and bio-LPG, in this context more so HVO, as a heating fuel, but also looking at tax relief and duty relief on some of these fuels so they can become more competitive. And there's also been approaches to an obligation type in the south that we see as well. So we're sort of exploring, how we could align north, south, east, west on some of these policies, but it is a little further behind.
Okay, thank you for that. And just a comment, if I noticed that the heat pumps, there's specific criteria around the heat pumps and the space between houses. What plans have you for heat pumps in social housing where you've got multiple, dwelling units in one building?
Yeah, so I suppose the feedback from our consultation, we looked at what support would look like across different tenures. And the strong feedback from our report is that we would be looking at owner-occupied buildings only in this going forward. And really, I suppose, to go back to the collaboration point with Department for Communities, we really see the social housing piece and their policy being led out of the Department for Communities on that side, but also in the private rented sector. So that's why it's so important, I guess, that we come together and we make sure that all of these are working together. And I suppose to describe a little bit about how we do that, myself and my colleague in DFC co-chair a residential coordination group that looks at policies across the piece, including, building regulations, the housing executive, what housing associations are doing. And we're looking at how different options for, I suppose, different funding models could be used in those spaces.
And will those be rolled out potentially in tandem with what you're doing in the residential? So the best use of resources like the skilled labour is all used at the same part of moving forward?
Yeah, so that's the alignment piece. Yeah. So it's making sure that their training requirements are the same for each of these areas as well. One other point, you're mentioning, I suppose, like an apartment block, for instance, or something like that. We're in the early stages of development heat network policy in the department as well. And, it'll obviously, we'll be consulting on that at a point later this year. We need to bring forward regulations because there's a revocation of regulations happening at a UK-wide level. So that'll be, I suppose, one part of the consumer protection package that you bring forward in terms of those communal type heating systems. So there's that side of it. I think you also mentioned the permitted development rights around distance requirements. So actually at the very start of this journey, we worked with DFI to have those reduced. They used to be really, really restrictive. You couldn't install a heat pump. I think it was a 30-metre limit from another building. So we had that moved down to 3 metres. But what we have seen in other regions is that has actually been reduced again, and there's work actually to remove it altogether. So there's probably more work to be done in that space, but at the moment it's not as prohibitive as what it would have been at one point on this journey.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Sinead?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for coming in. I suppose, my concern about all of this is that we're still building today the houses of the past. And, you know, however we try to drive domestic efficiency, energy efficiency, it can't happen if we're still building homes that are not fit for the future. And yet we know what to do. And I just look at the building regulations in the Republic of Ireland. I mean, they're so far advanced compared to ours, and the support then that goes in to make sure that those that are building the homes are building efficient homes is much greater. So that first of all is a concern, that we're kind of doing one thing with our hands tied behind our back. And then the other area that is concerning me is the retrofitting. You know, I see retrofitting as kind of the low-hanging fruit. And when you think of all the other things that we're struggling with in Northern Ireland, like our wastewater and all of those other pieces of infrastructure, sometimes fixing what we already have is the best way to reach domestic energy efficiency, and particularly within our social housing stock. So you know, it's reaching you know, people that maybe in areas of high levels of deprivation as well. So the targets for the housing executive for retrofitting may appear ambitious on paper, like of 410,000 by 2050, but we that's about 18,000 per annum. Are we reaching those targets? Because the Forum for Better Homes has advised that the energy target would only be met if we increased it to 30,000 per annum, but I'm not even sure if we're reaching the 18,000 per annum, and what kind of impact will that have within this new concept of, you know, looking at the domestic energy efficiency and the heating systems for homes.
Yeah, so there's a lot in that, and I suppose we're probably talking about policy now that it sits across 3 different departments.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose that through that residential coordination group is kind of our main hub for discussing all of these matters and ensuring that everything pulls in the same direction. I suppose feedback from industry would suggest that around half our homes, in that context 400,000 homes, need some form of remedial works in terms of insulation. Mm-hmm. So we absolutely see, I suppose, cavity wall, loft insulation as low-hanging fruit, as you've set out. And that, I suppose, is why, I suppose, key part of this scheme is moving, you know, a scheme that currently funds around half of it funding into fossil fuel boilers, and making sure we're using, I suppose, as much of that finance as available to fund insulation and to fund, I suppose, the low regret options here going forward. If I give you an example of 2024, for instance, we worked in the department to secure just over 2 million in funding and put it into the DEEHP programme. Now, you're talking about big numbers here, like tens of thousands of households. We put 2 million into DEEHP in 2024, and it represented a quarter of the insulation spend in this region. So that's how far we are away from achieving some of those numbers. And I guess what we're keen to do is put more measures into more homes using, you know, the finance that's available. In terms of social housing, typically what we see is that it is of a better standard in energy efficiency terms than the rest of the housing stock, and in many ways, I suppose, that was driven by standards of the past, like Code for Sustainable Homes and Eco Homes and things. But I guess that makes it probably more heat pump ready or ready for new heating technologies. But I guess the finance is the big question there.
We should be building them now with the heat pumps instead of.
I was going to come on to the regulations.
To actually do it after we build these. And some of the homes are absolutely beautiful and are more efficient than the previous homes. But still, they're not reaching the standards of which are available to them today.
I agree. Like, every home we build today is a retrofit problem for the future if we're installing fossil fuel boilers in it. Building regulations, I know they have a phased plan. I think it's with the executive set out to, you know, how we would deliver that. The CCC advised that we shouldn't be installing fossil fuel boilers in homes since 2025. So they have been quite clear on the pathway to do this. 90+% of homes in the south are installed with heat pumps now. And really, I suppose, the economic aspects of this, back to, you know, us being aware of where we work in energy, like, we are not going to grow a sustainable heat pump market here without, I suppose, ourselves supporting this being supported through housing policy, being supported through building regulations, etc. Like, we see the only sustainable pathway to delivering 10,000 plus heat pumps a year by the end of this decade in this region. Over half of that will come from new build. And that's, I suppose, exactly aligned with what's happening in the south. It's exactly aligned with the Warm Homes Plan published by the UK government last week. You know, they have targets of around 450,000 heat pumps installed per year or annually from 2030, and over 200,000 that is from new build in their assumptions. So, you know, we'd be in exactly the same boat. We would see, you know, a need for between 5,000 and 7,000 or whatever the new build number is to be installing heat pumps, so we can have a sustainable market and sustainable installer base start to grow around that.
I suppose what the back of that is that we need to support, you know, give incentives for people to do the right thing. And that's what they're doing heavily. And there was another announcement, I think it was this week actually, in the Republic of Ireland, additional supports for people that are building new homes to do the right thing, because they're, you know, protecting their future and the future of their children as well.
So, like, the one challenge we have is obviously if we regulate, we're not going to fund it as well. There's an additionality question there in public finance, so you don't do both typically at the same time. But feedback, I think, from our consultation was really strong in the self-build terms. So building regulations haven't got there. There are elements here where we could intervene with our grant intervention.
So far behind, to be honest. Okay, thank you.
Patrick?
Thanks, and thanks for your answers so far. I want to build on the skills points in particular. So the 2 points that I want to address are the apprenticeships and then reskilling opportunities as well. So with apprenticeships, one of the things which we're getting, and I'm sure other MLAs are getting as well, is the fact that a lot of people enter apprenticeships and then can't get a placement, and then subsequently have to either defer or drop out of their apprenticeship because of that. So I wanted to get a sense of, because this is quite a limited market at the minute, and obviously there's hopes to grow it and grow it at pace, are you finding those problems with apprentices who are coming through, that they can't perhaps get on board with, or they can't access an apprenticeship with an employer and so on?
I guess it mightn't be as specific as apprenticeships, but I can speak a little bit about what we hear back from industry about employing in this space. Specifically on insulation, the main feedback from industry is that without a long-term investment signals from the department and a long-term commitment, they can't upskill. Like, so we're moving year to year at the moment, trying to add additional funding into the existing DEEHP programme, and it's not clear, obviously, through, you know, the budget process what amount of funding we can put into that, sometimes until the summertime. And it means then you have a really constrained window of delivery, you know, sometimes 6 to 8 months to get that delivered by the 31st of March. But we have feedback from industry that last August they had no clarity in any work. You know, big companies here are telling us that. So the main thing we need to do here through this scheme is to utilise the funding that currently funds DEEHP, and to get, you know, that is funding gathered through a public service obligation through energy suppliers. And NIE, I suppose, gather that funding. So that funding is there every year. So that's the first thing. We have a pot of funding, and it's a long-term funding signal. That should hopefully enable, I suppose, a more sustainable approach to how these guys and these folks are employing out there. Because at the moment, it's very much like, you know, you're getting somebody in a really short-term contract to deliver some work, and they could be laid off. So we don't want that. In terms of, I suppose, the wider skills programme, a lot of these skills, we would say at sort of LCL level 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of, you know, cavity wall insulation as LCL level 2 courses. They're, you know, in Skill Up, they're short, sort of 6-week training programs. Some of the low carbon heating design and then install courses are a little bit longer. But I think that'll be the sort of first level, the entry level that we would like to go with. And I suppose in that longer term, then the apprenticeships would be something that would be a target, and I suppose to build on that. And I think the apprenticeships are going to be more important because there's more of a, I suppose, on the low carbon heat side, there's more need for skilled designers and I suppose ensuring that heating controls, and it gets more and more technical as you go into that space than it is, and I suppose some of the, I suppose, labour-based stuff on the insulation side.
And I know, just on the reskilling point, the Minister has obviously put in place some courses alongside universities to try and allow those reskilling opportunities. In terms of that, are you seeing many people coming from other industries into this? Because obviously we can't just rely on people who this is maybe their first time work, but we're hoping to also utilise the skills that are already in the workforce and redirect those.
No, absolutely. There's lots of great stats about that, about the workforce today. There'll be a certain percentage in 2030 and a certain percentage out to 2050. I guess a lot of our work is directly in with CERC and CITB, so they're the lead sort of construction college, and we see, I suppose, I've seen over the last week or so even some of the Peace Plus funding in Southwest College, Southern Regional College, starting to, I suppose, upscale their offerings in this space as well. The reskilling opportunities that we're seeing, that we're looking at like trigger points. So there's lots of gas installers out there and off-tech installers out there. So there's a great installer base for boilers. When they come into colleges, can we get them trained in a different way, skilled in a different way? So looking at that sort of approach to things, we think that'll be essential, really. And I guess gas is a good example because we've done this before. Gas arrived here in 1996, probably predominantly looked at heading out to big industrial anchor loads in the first few years. But, 20 odd years ago, we were doing this, reskilling oil engineers and gas engineers, and we do have to go through that again. So we need to take those lessons learned from the past, and there's some great folk in CERC that we've been working with on the courses and developing courses in this space.
Well, that's the year I was born, so I'm very glad that you said 20 odd years ago. It's made me feel a bit better there.
Okay.
But just on that point, so one of the things is that obviously we're going to have specific courses here that people are going to train, and that's going to be their full career. But in terms of other courses that are already out there, what elements can be introduced? So, for example, modular elements, it's to try and understand. There's been really good work by the colleges, and I think we can all attest to the fact that the colleges here, we're really lucky to have them because they are really industry focused, really skills focused. But what conversations are you having to actually ensure that other similar courses or with similar skills can have modules that can then work into this and so on?
Yeah, I suppose if I took it even to the climate change perspective, we in the department have developed a governance approach here. A number of our public bodies must report under the public body reporting regulations that come out of that act. So all of the FE colleges, both of our larger universities and Vest and I are all together in that group. And that's some of what we're looking at is, I suppose, I'm losing the word, it's not the syllabus, but I suppose their modules and their approaches to things, and starting to embed, I suppose, aspects of what we're doing with our functions across the whole department. So I think whilst we're probably not there yet, I think there's a pathway to do that, and it is, I suppose, it has a proper governance structure and proper oversight within the department. We would like, I suppose, to use the Green Skills Action Plan, that subgroup from the Green Skills Action Plan, to start to address some of those gaps as well. And, I think on the apprenticeship side, to go back to that point, the Housing Executive are well ahead of us in terms of, they'll be the people here that are employing the apprentices predominantly. And at the moment, I think they are struggling to get access. So it's about, I suppose, sustainably scaling all this up together and making sure that there's a clear signal to industry that this is a long-term plan from government, that this isn't short-termism. And that, I suppose, that would give, I suppose, us the opportunity to be able to do that. But there's a lot of questions around where funding is going to come from and revitalisation, etc. with the Housing Executive that are foundational to that.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ryan. You said that the executive had a paper with it for consideration at the moment. What would that mean for new homes? In terms of heat pumps, what would it mandate then?
So, I suppose the phased approach is set out in the energy strategy. Again, this is the Department of Finance policy, so I don't want to mislead with incorrect information. But as far as I understand it, this is a phased approach to, improving energy efficiency in dwellings. And I suppose later along this journey, the notional building that we compare whenever we're designing a new building here in the modelling, so it's all about the modelling that sits behind the building regulations, that notional building would begin to have a heat pump as standard, and then the building that you are building would compare to that notional building. And this is following, I guess, the Future Home Standard in GB and following the modelling approach that's been taken.
It would mean that any new build would be mandated to have a heat pump as opposed to a traditional oil burner?
The notional dwelling would have a heat pump, and typically what happens is building regulations stay technology agnostic in this space, and it means that you have to run your calculation and your design to meet the emissions requirements of that notional building. And to do that, it's typically then over to developers to understand what is the most cost-effective way for them to do that. So there may, through this transition, be an opportunity to install solar on the gas boiler to meet the requirements. But as that requirement strengthens and tightens through time, and I don't believe it is in the next phase, or maybe even the phase after that, it is a phased plan to get to a point where that notional building will be heat pump, and inevitably cost will drive the developer to put a heat pump in.
But ultimately the paper will lead to the removal of oil burners in new homes? Yeah. Okay.
And oil will become much more untenable than gas.
And the reason I have concerns with that is there is some people that have already installed heat pumps, and their experience is very varied. You'll accept that. And it largely comes down to what we all know is a cost of living crisis. And when you talk to those working middle, as I call them, who are struggling to pay bills as it is, what are the cost concerns in relation to a heat pump? Higher upfront costs. Performance is not as good in particularly poor insulated homes, which leads to higher cost. The unit cost for electricity to run them is a lot higher than traditional oil prices, and there's an element of unknown there as to price fluctuations, and they've seen what has happened in recent years, and I think they've good cause for concern. Cold temperatures. So when we have periods of cold, which in Northern Ireland we inevitably do, heat pumps do not perform as consistently because that will vary and fluctuate given their intensity as temperatures drop, in comparison with an oil burner, which is consistent. And the last one is repair and reliability. People that I've talked to have vastly different experiences in what it takes to cost to maintain. So all of these considerations, I feel, need to be taken into consideration in any paper, because there is a real crisis point for homeowners at the moment, and heating is a huge concern, and I would share the concerns that have been expressed by me on all of those points, and I would just like to know how you would confront each one of those concerns.
No problem. I think much of what you've said is statement of fact, and I would agree with it. I suppose for us, there's a real challenge here with the capital cost of installing a heat pump, and that's why we were proposed to bring forward a grant programme to do that. The operating costs are then the challenge on the other side of that. And at the moment, what we have here is a unit of electricity cost that is, 4 times the cost of traditional fossil fuels. And what I suppose that disparity then can't be addressed by the efficiency of a heat pump in full. So a heat pump is 3 times more efficient or 4 times more efficient than a traditional fossil fuel boiler. So that cost disparity is addressed somewhat through that efficiency. But as you have said, that efficiency is variable. Some of the things that we're seeing develop are the new range of R290 heat pumps from a number of the large manufacturers. These heat pumps are more efficient again. They use propane as the refrigerant. They're more efficient again than what the previous generation were, and this only happened in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. They can achieve higher temperatures, and they're much more effective right down to temperatures of around minus 25. So we're seeing a new range of heat pumps that is going to, I suppose, drive out some of those older, more temperamental versions. I think it still probably doesn't give you a cost saving over gas in particular. You're probably looking at equivalent in the best case, and oil is cheaper. And I think we have outlined that in our consultation in some of the annexes. We've graphs charting that out to showcase that. The big thing that is going to make the change in cost terms is work that has been taken forward by the department on the electricity side. So what we're seeing in terms of smart metering, agile tariffs, dynamic pricing and flexibility, and the shift in the market in England at the moment is profound. Now, we're much smaller and may never have that scale in our market, but energy suppliers are coming forward here with tariffs that are half the price. If you can shift, between 4 and 7 in the evening, you've heated your thermal store in your house, your heat pump isn't running, you're buying electricity at a cheaper time, and savings are being availed of now to the tune of £300 or £400 a year over gas boilers. So our danger is obviously we're going out now and trying to scale the market at a time when smart meters aren't in our homes. So we're going to have to work through a phase here of, I suppose, going out with grant support. There'd be some early adoption, but we would actually see this as fairly low in the grand scheme of what this heat and energy efficiency programme will do. We predominantly see the early years of this being in energy efficiency and the heat pump side of this having to scale. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is one piece of the jigsaw. There's a number of options that are on the table here. We're running a trial for an approach for hybrid heat pumps, through the utility regulator, through the gas price control. And we're also, I suppose, looking at what the Housing Executive have installed around 400 heat pumps now, and they're sharing a lot of that data with us. And a lot of those were mandated that R290 propane heat pump as well. So we're, I suppose, at a point in time where, we're having to look ahead and having to plan ahead. And I suppose, like maintenance and repair, to me, without growing a market and growing a market of installers, that is never going to be there really as a backup service. So I suppose this is about us. I think, I've heard people talk about it in creating a market, because it is really that much of in its infancy. So I've heard those stories as well, people struggling to get services and things like that.
You would accept that a heat pump is a much more complex application than a traditional oil boiler, and therefore the ongoing maintenance in the longer term will be higher than your traditional oil burner if maintained right.
Yeah, it'll require a different set of skills, and it is more complex.
The running of a heat pump, talk me through it 24. It's continuous. Yes. See, that is another problem. Like, I know many homes that come the summer weather, they don't use their oil boiler. They don't have to use it. Their homes are warm. Vis-a-vis somebody that has to have continuous running, albeit in warmer temperatures, it will not be as high in terms of costs, but it is a cost. We have charities in Northern Ireland, and in fact, I'm sure every member here has been associated with them, with people that are crying out for electricity vouchers at the moment in Northern Ireland, and there's a huge demand for it. To me, and they come to me with these concerns, I do not see how we, in today's climate, with the cost of living crisis, without the adequate safeguards that are built into electricity, that this is feasible on a wide scale as what you have outlined perhaps maybe in that particular paper. Those are just concerns that I thought I would raise with you today.
Okay, I suppose your first point talks about continuous running. A heat pump will not run during the summer in a home if the house isn't calling for heat. So in everybody's home, you should have a thermostat, like a room level thermostat or a floor level thermostat. If that thermostat has reached its set point, and in a heating system such as a heat pump system, you would have a summer set point of say 18 degrees in your home, the heating will not come on. You will use it for heating hot water. There could be an alternative approach through an immersion heater where you'll heat your hot water. So during those summer months, highly unlikely that there's going to be any continuous running. Whenever we talk about continuous running, it is because a heat pump is designed specifically to be a low temperature system, as are gas condensing boilers, but a lot of us don't operate them that way, right? Everybody hits boost, everybody hits it on for a couple of hours. This is about information, advice, awareness. This is going to take a massive campaign here to help people understand how this operates. But we can see this continuous running with a smart meter, dynamic pricing, and I suppose flexible on and off from your heat pump being signalled from the electricity market, saving consumers hundreds of pounds today in England. And it will take us a couple of years to get there through smart meters and through our electricity suppliers bringing forward new products in this space to be able to deliver that sort of savings. Other respondents to our consultation looked at pairing this with other technologies such as solar, and battery storage. You're getting into the territory where the Warm Homes Plan is saying agile tariffs on average can save up to £400. If you add further technologies such as solar and battery, you're getting in the territory of £700 to £1,000 savings per year on today's prices. But as I say, we're looking ahead a couple of years here into a time where we have smart meters in our homes, where we have electricity suppliers coming forward with new products and availing of, I suppose, the potential to utilise renewable energy at a time when it's cheap. So then they can deliver a product to us in terms of the delivered cost of energy at a cheaper cost.
I appreciate, I'm not going to detain any longer. I remain to be convinced, but I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
No problem.
Cheers. You bring me on to, we talk about siloed between departments here, but within the department, what work's going on between the department and within the department? Because part of the key of this is actually the grid reinforcement, the overall energy plan, the smart meter, and all of it. You need all of this. So what work can you reassure us that there's a work going on to actually align all of the parts of the department together to deliver?
Yeah, so we're an energy group. All the matters that you raise are in energy group. Yeah. So there's 4 divisions in energy group. I'm one of 4 directors. You've met all of us. So we work really closely together to ensure that we're planning this work, that we ensure that timelines add up here. There's part of this where we're really keen to sequence this and make sure that things are being, I suppose, published at the right time. If you look at what's happened in connections policy, some of those new build homes that member was raising, some people were being faced with costs of £10,000 to £15,000 for an electricity connection. So if a self-builder out there wanted to install a heat pump, that socialisation of connection costs or making connection costs fairer will enable that to happen without that upfront cost. Things like smart meters, I sit on the oversight group of the smart meter rollout and delivery plan. Even though I'm on heat policy side, I'm sitting there to make sure that that's lined up. If we look at across government, I'm on the board of the field property strategy, the housing supply strategy. We sit in the residential coordination group. We're doing everything we can to make sure that this is all lined up.
When are we seeing smart meters? When are they coming?
Yeah, I think we're having a conversation with NIE, and there's options for procurement and the rollout to start in 2027. But again, I don't want to mislead the committee.
It's just whenever you mention, because part of this is the electricity cost. The concerns, a lot of the concerns that Jonathan's raised there and other members said, is actually around cost. It's around what people pay, and I suppose if we drive the price of electricity down with grid reinforcement, north south, all of that, then this becomes more viable and confidence for people. I totally agree with you as well. This is a lot of educational bit of you to the public, but actually also one of the it's actually really good you're looking in the fabric first. I think that's a good change within the department to go that. But one of the things that concern me, the biogas, you've kind of ruled that out. Yet it's a new, or it says about the hybrid pump, the hybrid where you have the gas and the heat pump. You've kind of dismissed that because of the fossil fuel again, but biogas is coming along. Cost, everything was expensive at the start, and as it grows and develops, so is there not a space for that to be allowed and able to grow? Because it's massive for agriculture, as well as for the waste of agriculture.
Yeah, I think our government response basically said our thoughts would be heat pump led here, and that's I suppose we need to clarify that or put that in context of the work that is going on in biomethane, because, and I mentioned earlier that we are working on a trial of hybrid heat pumps with the gas industry as well. So there's a number of things, I suppose, that we would like to see. There's BES reports going back to 2018 that I suppose have, variety of signals as to whether or not a hybrid heat pump approach is the way to go. There's only one economy in Europe, and that's the Netherlands, that are taking that approach here. And we would like to see whether or not, I suppose, we feel that it works for here. There's been an electrification of heat trial across the water. There's about 750 heat pumps installed in that. 150 of those were in a hybrid form. Again, it felt like the hybrid version wasn't, I suppose, as effective as the normal heat pump because those high temperatures and that sort of peaking approach wasn't required. But for you know, the issues outlined here, you know, by members, we have a very different market. We don't have those agile tariffs. We have a very different cost model. So we're keen to see, I suppose, what the outcome of that pilot, which is 100 plus heat pumps here, is. And whilst we say in our government response our approach is heat pump led, I suppose what we're talking about here in the wider programme is getting a managing service agent in place, getting the infrastructure in place to go ahead and do this. And we want this to be really simple in terms of what our offerings are to consumers. And we're not ruling things like that out at this stage. I guess we want to see more Northern Ireland specific evidence from the industry on that approach, and we will, I suppose, take decisions further down the line about whether grant support would come or not. But I guess I need to caveat it all with COP29, the UK government agreed to end subsidy of all fossil fuels. Yeah. And that's a real challenge for us. Whenever the Climate Change Act comes through here, that presents basically a foundational approach here where we won't be funding fossil fuels anymore through government subsidy. And I suppose the challenge is the transition then. Yeah. And whether or not there's an alternative pathway to fund hybrid heat pumps through gas policy, through, I suppose, whether or not utility regulator would determine, I suppose, a hybrid heat pump approach in the next price control for gas, which is in 2029, or some of the things that we're looking about, you know, so it mightn't come from government intervention, but it may come through the regulatory environment within which they operate.
We've had a huge opportunity, and we wouldn't want it ruled out. At this stage, there's a huge opportunity for, you know, with the waste of agriculture to deal with that, to also then have a product that's actually sellable and viable, and actually decarbonises our heating, you know, right across. So it you know, it's a young, and it's growing, and you get into hydrogen as well. But it's just the concern for me was that we're ruling stuff out too early, rather than allowing it to actually progress, and then, you know, if it doesn't work, you know, we can do it, but not nipping it too early. That's what I
think that's the point in the trial. I think we want to be clear. We've a simple, I suppose, you know, list of interventions that we're pushing forward with here. But the next bit is, let's run the trial. Let's see whether that's evidence for that to be funded through the gas regulatory environment. And I suppose we're developing biomethane policy as it set out earlier. You know, there's an intention there to consult on that.
That's positive, and that's good. So thank you. Last thing for me then, we saw the UK government bring in those interest-free loans for households to actually be able to access to, if they want to fabric first or solar, put heat pumps, whatever, into their own house. Are the department doing anything in that space, or are we able to access?
So the Warm Homes Plan was published last week. I think a lot of the main announcements were around 15 billion of funding. I suppose it's important to clarify that between a half and a third of that is loan funding. Some of it's sort of FTC funded, etc. And even, I suppose, to go back a wee bit, like, we've been working with the UK government on this for over a year now. We're integrated in this process. I meet with counterparts there every couple of weeks on this. The challenge is that there's probably still a lack of clarity about what this means for devolved administrations. And page like sort of 48, 49 in that plan sort of sets that out. It sets out all of the funding pots, but also sets out that further clarity will be provided in March this year in terms of what this means for devolved administrations. It means that, like, there'll be barring consequentials for some funding that would be new, but there's also a lot of this is loan funding, a lot of this is already in the spending review pot of funding as well. So we're seeking more clarity. I attended an interministerial group on just Monday past with UK Minister and Communities Minister here as an observer, and really clarity is the key. Every administration is asking for clarity, because at the minute there's big announcements, and we need to know, I suppose, what it means for us.
Yeah, I suppose and I agree totally with what you've got. You've got the grant funding going in to those that need that support, and we do that, and the housing stock, that's perfect. But those that can afford it to do this, if there's an option of that, low interest loans or zero interest loans, I think it was announced, is something I think we should be grabbing with both hands, because it would actually turbocharge the transition across and allow people the freedom to do that. So that is something that, if we can get more information as soon as the department has, it'd be really useful for us to have. So anybody got so thank you very much. Anybody got anything else? Gemma, do you want to come in? I haven't seen, but anything anybody else, or ask the clerk if you Anything there's nothing to summarise really, is there? Just
Was it for the officials to report, and then we'll do that.
yeah, no problem. Listen, thank you very much, Simon, for
Look
coming in.
forward
Really
to interacting with you going forward in this important work.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't need to summarise when they're in, because sometimes they argue with me.
That's right. That's right.
So, Chair, in summary then, just to write to the department, as you just said, seeking information on the warm home plans and what that will likely mean for devolved administrations, particularly in Northern Ireland Executive. If that's agreed, Chairperson?
Yeah, I agree.
Lovely.
Yeah. That's fine. Then we'll move on to item 8, which is an Assembly research briefing on the RHI closure of non-domestic scheme bill. The committee commissioned the Assembly research to provide a paper of support on the support scheme for renewable heat in the Republic of Ireland and the implications of RHI closure. It's on page 147 of your briefing pack, and the response to the queries of Aidan's previous papers in 158. So I will pass over to Aidan now. Thank you. Welcome again.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, members. So this morning I'm going to provide a short overview of the inspection regime under the SEAI's support scheme for renewable heat and compare that to what we currently know about the proposed RHI closure scheme's inspection regime. For context, it's worth having a quick look at the SEAI scheme itself. There are 2 programmes under the support scheme for renewable heat banner. Operational aid, which provides ongoing payments for biomass and anaerobic digestion, and investment aid, which provides an investment grant of up to 40% for air, ground and water source heat pumps. The briefing note in your packs focused on the operational aid, as it's most closely corresponds with the RHI scheme and the proposed closure arrangements. Operational aid provides payment tariffs for both biomass and AD installations used for space, water or process heating. Tariffs are fixed at the point of entry to the scheme and do not increase with inflation. Tariffs may be reviewed, but any changes will impact on new entrants only. Periodic reviews of biomass tariffs may take place, and these are designed to prevent windfall payments by reducing such tariffs to existing biomass participants. Turning to the inspection regime itself, the SEAI carries out desk-based audits and on-site inspections. Inspections take place prior to the granting of funding and periodically during operation. SEAI guidance notes that periodic inspections are carried out at the agency's discretion to verify meter readings and review compliance. They can also be triggered by a complaint. There are also regular periodic inspections. These take place 3 months after payments begin. If passed, the next inspection is within 2 years. If failed, the inspection takes place within 1 year. Subsequent inspection intervals then depend on previous audit results, the review of 6-month and annual reports submitted by the operator, and the identification of particular risks. As a consequence of failed inspections, SEAI may cease or claw back payments until non-compliance is addressed. Under the operational aid programme, recipients are generally notified of inspections. Information provided to RAISE by the agency stated that in practice this notice period is 2 weeks. In addition, the scheme's guidance states that the SEAI retains the right to carry out an inspection without notice, for example when a complaint is received or there are discrepancies in the data. Additional information provided by the SEAI lets us know that inspections are outsourced to a contractor. Inspections are undertaken by 3 inspectors who spend part of their time on the inspection of operational aid. The work of these inspectors is overseen by one manager who spends 20% of their time on SSRH inspections. In 2025, 50 inspections were conducted, of which 10 were on-site inspections of new applications and 40 were periodic inspections of installations that have been operating for more than 1 year. Table 2 on page 157 of your packs provides a comparison of the inspections under the SEAI scheme with what is known about inspections under the RHI closure. As members will be aware, the the inspection regime under the RHI closure is to be finalised. The information in the paper about that scheme is drawn from the consultation and from DFE evidence to the committee. Looking at the table, there are two real key differences. The first is the notice period. It's not clear whether DFE will engage in inspections without notice at this point. And second is the frequency and regularity of inspections. We don't have longitudinal data on the SAI inspections, but as noted, they carried out 50 in 2025, and the DFE is proposing at least 90 a year on average, with the possibility of further at-risk inspections. The SAI scheme also inspects with a degree of regularity. There's the initial inspection, and then there's an inspection after 2 years or 1 year. And although the DFE has mentioned in evidence that it's going to have at-risk inspections, there's nothing being said about those sorts of follow-on inspections. So that's really all I wanted to cover. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Sinead?
Aidan, thanks a million for that. And that's really interesting paper, and it's good to have all that information in front of us. Did you find any evidence of how often the SEAI has ceased to make payments?
No, but I didn't ask that question of the SAA. I can go back to them to seek that information.
Just, I mean, maybe not a lot, but it's just, I would be interested to know. Okay.
Anybody anything else? No? Ian, thank you very much as always for your briefings and the information you bring to us. Really, really useful. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. So Clark, would you summarise?
Thanks, Chairperson. If you look at page 158, as you indicated earlier, we have the Department's response to some of the committee's questions. I think the committee had indicated to me previously that they didn't need to receive any further evidence. There was an offer from RHA and I, but there was nobody else. So that being the case, members, it is suggested, and this is where I seek members' feedback, that upon receipt of the draft RHI closure regulations, the committee might therefore informally deliberate on the 11th of February and then formally undertake clause by clause on the 18th, and I would then bring a report to the committee shortly after that, the week after, so that would be reporting for the 27th, but that would basically be that, so that the committee is pretty much done with evidence pending whatever the department is going to tell us when they come to us on the 11th of February. So, Chair, are members happy with that, or is there another burning issue, so to speak, other than the feedback that Ms McLaughlin had asked about SEIA and the number of payments that may have been halted? But other than that, are we good, Chairperson?
Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
That's
good.
great,
Thanks,
yeah.
members. Thank you. That's fab.
No bother. We'll move on to item 9 then, which is the SL1 Parent Bereavement Miscarriage Leave. So remember, following the passage of the Parent Bereavement Leave and Pay Act 2022, the Department undertook consultation in 2022 on providing miscarriage leave and pay. So the committee will receive evidence from officials in respect to the proposed related statutory rule. So can I welcome, sorry, I should have said this is page 225 of your pack, and the consultation the Department's response to the consultation is page 238. So can I welcome Colin Jack, Geraldine Lavery and Joseph Ward, and if I hand over to you and talk us through this.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you for providing the opportunity to present the SL1 regarding the Parental Bereavement Leave and Pay Miscarriage Regulations Northern Ireland 2026. Before we continue, we recognise how emotive this subject is. We're mindful that legislative and medical language can sound clinical, but the intent of this legislation following the Assembly's requirements through the Parental Bereavement Leave and Pay Act 2022 has been to create a supportive right which recognises personal loss and enables compassion in the workplace. These regulations, which are required to follow the draft affirmative procedure, give effect to statutory obligations outlined in the 2022 Act, which requires the Department to extend parental bereavement leave and pay entitlements to include cases of miscarriage by the 6th of April of this year. A subsequent phase concerning day one rights for the pay element will be introduced separately via an additional SL1 in the next few weeks. The amendments regarding day one rights will proceed through the confirmatory process, while these regulations that we have today relating to miscarriage will follow the draft affirmative procedure and will require debate and formal approval prior to enactment. Implementation of the day one rights provisions is dependent upon approval of these miscarriage-related amendments in accordance with the current legislative framework. The purpose of these regulations is to introduce a new entitlement criterion for parental bereavement leave and pay where an employee has experienced a miscarriage or meet the specified relationship criteria in relation to a woman who's experienced a miscarriage. This includes spontaneous miscarriages as well as cases involving medical intervention to help to protect the health of the pregnant woman or severe fetal impairment or fatal fetal abnormality. The entitlement applies where the miscarriage occurs or is discovered on or after the 6th of April 2026. The regulations amend the existing parental bereavement leave and pay framework to ensure that employees affected by miscarriage are afforded the same rights and protections as those currently available in cases of child death or stillbirth. The policy intention is to provide eligible employees with paid protected time away from work following bereavement and to formally recognise the impact of miscarriage through a clear statutory entitlement. A full public consultation was undertaken and the Department's response has been shared with the committee within the last week or so. The policy has also been subject to the necessary equality, regulatory, rural needs and data protection assessments, all of which concluded that the extension of these rights is proportionate and doesn't give rise to adverse impacts. The Department intends to implement the right in line with the statutory requirements. We're grateful to the committee for meeting with us today and including this important right on the agenda, and we're happy to take any questions.
I have Sinead.
Okay. Colin, thank you very much for that. This is a very sensitive subject. But how do we, or how does the department communicate this effectively with employers? Because a lot of employers, will be genuinely concerned, but also want to do the right thing. Like the vast majority of employers want to support their workers, and the most valuable thing that they have is those that work with them. So how do you communicate this to workers? And also, I suppose, how do you communicate it to the wider public, employees, etc., and working with the trade unions and others to make sure that everyone understands every dot and tittle of this actual legislation?
Yeah, so I suppose the first route for us would be through the department's press office and obviously the statements of the minister. It's been fairly well established for some time that the 6th of April 2026 will be the date when this new right will come into force. We are the first jurisdiction to have this extension of the right to cases of miscarriage, and we've been working with the Labour Relations Agency, for example, which would take the lead in communications with employers on all issues to do with workplace rights, and they've certainly had it as part of their work plan to publicise this right. The department will use its social media channels and so on. Geraldine, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
There's also been extensive work with the team and HMRC in order to make sure at the points where employers are exercising this right on behalf of employees that the information and guidance is exact and where they need to find it. And then the normal channels for employer and employee information through NI Business Info and NI Direct will also be utilised, and that's where people are familiar looking for information on employment rights, so that will be updated as well to reflect this. So those channels they're familiar with will make sure that they have the right information.
It was interesting. I was speaking to an employer over the weekend just about general stuff. It was through a social engagement, but I happened to mention this here, and that's exactly what she deals with in her, the finance and a bit of the HR. and she really had no idea about any of it. It was a new conversation that it was happening. So that communication piece, I think, is so important that people can understand. And she works in a sector that is predominantly women in that sector as well. So it's really important that she understands just the content of this. And I think that we probably need to do more.
I mean, I think that's a reasonable point. I mean, the number of people who will be entitled to this because they've had a miscarriage will be significantly greater than the number of people who would have been accessing this right to parental bereavement leave and pay in the circumstances of a child's death, just because, thankfully that's a much rarer thing to happen. So, I would expect, a large number of employers will need to be aware of this, right, because they will have people who will be entitled to use it, which, I mean, thankfully, only larger employers and maybe a small proportion of smaller employers would have had to deal with parental bereavement leave and pay up to now.
Okay.
Okay, Jonathan. Thank you, Chair. Colin, thanks for coming to committee, and I would echo your comments at the very outset. It is a very sensitive issue, and there is terminology that's used that may be triggering to some people, but I understand from purposes of regulations there is a degree of accuracy that's required in terms of some of the crafting of the language. I think I read that there's something like 3,000 occurrences of miscarriage in Northern Ireland, and as somebody that is very, very proud of their pro-life position, I recognise the need to support women, particularly with what this regulation would enable. So I want to say that from the very outset, and I would also say that as someone, again, that values pro-life, I also see this as recognition of life pre-birth, which is really important to me in the faith that I hold. You talk also that this is actually the first in the Northern Hemisphere to do something like this. Now, that is in itself a good thing in many ways, but also there's risks associated with that, and it's important that we understand those risks, and that's why these briefing sessions are very important. I think I read in one of your assessments that there is a medium risk associated with this regulation. Could you maybe outline to the committee what those risks would be?
So the risks really are something that we've been discussing with HMRC and with our own finance and audit people within the department. And really they are, the biggest risk is probably of someone in GB trying to access this right, which is only intended for parents in Northern Ireland. And so we've been working with HMRC to make sure there are features designed into their systems to prevent it being accessed by people who aren't entitled. So that's one of the biggest risks. I mean, Joe, do you want to add to that?
We've been developing a system that will record a lot of details at the point where an employer interacts with HMRC, so that we can validate and ensure that the claims are legitimate for Northern Ireland employees. That's from the point that the declaration that the person's entitled has been given to the employer. So that's where the validation and verification work that we're doing, and that'll be an ongoing process. HMRC have a report every year that's through the Government Actuaries Department that shows the uptake of the right. We have it that we've designed the system that'll identify the Northern Ireland only elements separately, and we can look at the scale of uptake, and we can look and see how many people are availing of the right on an annual basis. There is a window for them to adjust the figures every 3 years, and we can comment that as and when those changes or maybe those variances are then reflected in an updated report.
It's fair to say that particular risk is associated with potential overrunning costs because of additional recipients, so that's fair enough on that point. I want to talk about the evidential proof aspect. Whenever you read the consultation responses, most of those that did respond agreed with most of the questions. There was a degree of variability when it came to evidential proof, and again that can be a triggering issue as well, and I respect that. Can you perhaps outline what the evidential proof which would be required, which would pertain to the particular regulations.
So, we then take that one, Colin. So in line with what's currently present for parental bereavement pay, it would just be a declaration on behalf of the employee. That would be both for the woman who's experienced the miscarriage or their partner who's in employment as well. That was done for a number of reasons. That was to do with that a lot of early miscarriages couldn't actually be recorded. That would basically be the person's own knowledge, and that there's also a third-party information risk there as well. That if medical evidence was required to be given, then a partner to qualify would potentially be using a woman's medical history to give to a third-party employer that had no connection to that woman. So it was done on a balance to ensure that the evidence requirements were appropriate for the right, and that it is a statutory payment as well when it's at that level.
Yeah. And I understand that is an issue. I suppose I would largely agree with those that responded to that particular question to say that there is, whilst we must be cognizant of the particular sensitivities, evidential proof in terms of for employer for support and indeed for other issues is important, especially whenever we look particularly at the regulation as drafted. And sorry, it's just went off my screen. I just want to be clear. 1 minute, Chair. Yeah, so Part 2, Clause 4, which goes into the application of entitlement, and there's particular definition around miscarriage for the purpose of this regulation, and it's set out in a very specific way to, I suppose, ensure consistency and offset any concerns. How can you ensure that that particular clause is relevant whenever we perhaps don't have the evidential proof if it is self-declaration? And that's just a point for me when I'm reading through this and trying to understand how you would, in a sense, keep that particular part of the clause relevant with... do you understand my point?
So you're asking really about how can we verify that someone is genuinely entitled?
Based on that, we have to look at what the regulation says.
Yeah.
I think maybe this comes back to Sinead's point about communication. When we're communicating this to the general public, we will obviously have to change the language in a way that's easy to understand what allows someone to acquire the right, so that when they make the self-declaration, they know that they're compliant. And with the self-declaration, when people have been through this tragic circumstance, you know that it's only going to be people who've experienced this that will use this. So it's making sure that they understand this is the criteria they meet in order to avail of it. And that's what we're putting, I suppose, making sure that they have information to know that they qualify so that they can apply for it when they do. So the communication piece is, I think, important with that, that we get the language right for the end user.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose there is, in terms of fraudulent use of this, right, which I suppose is what you're getting at. I mean, the rate of pay associated with it is £194.32 per week, or it will be from the 6th of April this year. It's a rate in common to a range of statutory payments. So if an employee works for an employer who doesn't top this up to a higher level, then really there's probably not an incentive for people to claim this fraudulently, because they'd be taking a reduction in their pay.
I'm not making the assumption on fraudulent. I don't particularly look at this particular piece like that. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, given that it's the first in the Northern Hemisphere, given that, with legislation it's important to ensure that it's as watertight as possible. I'm just trying to understand. I think your point, Geraldine, has clarified that for me. The other point, and again, I suspect it's because of the wording of the particular regulation that has to be for drafting purposes. The word stands out to me there, spontaneous. It's quite a crude word in some instances. Can you perhaps maybe lay out to me, for the purpose of the regulation, what that means?
So that was in consultation with Department of Health officials and just common parlance as well, that would be a miscarriage that's naturally occurring, that there was no medical intervention involved, or the miscarriage was confirmed after the fact, whereas medical intervention would obviously come after.
Yeah, the last point for me, and I thank you for your indulgence, Chair, but I just want to be sure on it. So obviously the partner rights in relation to this particular bereavement, or the particular part of the regulation, So, for example, if somebody, they don't work at the same place, they present again, what's the procedure? Could you talk me through that for a partner that's experienced miscarriage, what their procedure would be for an employer?
So they would go to their employer and say that I would like the avail of parental bereavement leave and pay. If it's both, if they're an employee, they'll have both the leave and the pay. They would then have a form to fill in where they would put down their name, so it's on file for HMRC if they ever wanted the full records. That a miscarriage has occurred and they're entitled under the criteria, and that the date of the miscarriage occurred on a certain date or was discovered by their partner on that date.
Okay.
So that would be their only requirement.
And the only potential issue with that would be if a circumstance was to arise, whereas somebody was perhaps making up a claim that they had a partner or something and perhaps didn't. Is there a greater evidence proof on the part of a partner than that would be of the woman that has experienced this?
No, we kept the declaration the same way that it is at present, to keep that system for parental bereavement sort of aligned the whole way across, that it is just the declaration for all criteria that you would qualify under now.
I suppose the disincentive would be what you have said about the cost variation between what this would entitle you to compared to whether it's...
And also it is fraud at that point, and it's fraud against your employer, it's a statutory payment, so there are consequences of that, and then if someone was to be discovered doing that, they'd be subject to the normal disciplinary processes for that, so they'd be risking employment to exercise that fraudulently.
And I mean, clearly, this would be part of the National Insurance Fund that is, it'll be managed as part of the National Insurance Fund. The executive will be required to pay for the cost of this particular right, where normally for other rights which are available throughout the UK, we don't need to, the executive doesn't need to pay for the statutory payment, so there'll be a process for reimbursing the cost for this particular payment. But it will be audited by HMRC, so they'll have various ways that they'll have of checking.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence, and thank you for the sensitive way in which you talked me through that. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Gemma, it's online.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for coming in for your presentations. I do agree that this is a very sensitive topic, and it's very progressive, and it is much needed, unfortunately. So just a couple of questions. So how will this introduction leave, this miscarriage leave help support the emotional and financial well-being of employees during this heartbreaking time that they would find themselves in?
Well, I suppose it will give them time and space away from the workplace. And it's been designed in such a way that it can be taken either as a block of 2 weeks immediately after the miscarriage, or it can be taken as 2 separate weeks at different times. So, for example, it might be that someone would want to take a week at an anniversary of a miscarriage happening, and that works very much in the same way as for the existing right to parental bereavement leave and pay in the circumstances of a child death or a stillbirth, which has been in place for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And just another question: what benefits do employers and even the wider economy stand to gain from implementing this as cost neutral?
You want me to come in there, Tom? So the statutory payments, for the most part, is reimbursed at a percentage of either 92% to the employer or 108.5%. So whenever they're making those payments that are at the statutory rate, depending on whether or not they're a large or medium employer or a small employer, they'll qualify for 92% of that back. If they're a small employer, they'll get 108.5%, so they'll have that topped up to help them meet some of their additional costs that they maybe normally wouldn't have to deal with these processes, or they're a small business that maybe wouldn't have a full HR process in place, that they have to do things on an ad hoc basis, and that helps compensate them for that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, and I just want to thank you again about the sensitive nature in which you've handled this, so thank you for your work on it.
Thank you, Gemma. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on the one point on communication, and who really is going to be. You mentioned you've been working with the Labour Relations Agency. I'm just conscious that, following on from Sinead's point, excuse me, this is kind of the minimum, so that'd be just employers knowing that they can build a more kind of holistic package if they're able to do so. How that then comes into their bereavement leave policies, the relationship test as well. I mean, like, this is going to have an impact on the workforce too, and how managers would deal with this, how they're equipped to deal with it in a really compassionate way. So I'm just interested in who takes the lead on this communication and how we ensure that, you know, everyone is doing it in the most compassionate way possible.
I think obviously there's a soft skill associated with this, but also what we recognise at these points in time is that, especially for small employers, that they won't necessarily look to guidance until the point in time where they need to use it. So at the point in time where people need to be aware of this, right, we need to make sure that the communication is accessible, emphasises the need for it to be compassion, and that you treat the people who come to you with sensitivity and trust that your employees. So we have to incorporate that into the guidance, but as I said, it's making it accessible at the point in time where people need it. Obviously, we have lots of good employers here, particularly larger employers will know this is coming. Some have adjusted their policies already. There are many employers who go above the statutory minimum already in anticipation of this coming and give more than the statutory minimum, so those are great. Not every employer can have that capacity to do the same thing and doesn't have a HR department, so we need to make sure the information is accessible. So our focus on delivering, and I say the team have worked very, very closely with HMRC to a point of payroll, certainly, that the accuracy of the payments, the tests that need to be met, that's captured in a way that's accessible. But the supporting guidance, it will be points of reference that go, you know, someone who's new to this, when they first have their first, either the unfortunate circumstance where they need to avail of it themselves or they need to bring it to their employer, we need to make sure that that is tailored in such a way that it's accurate but also reflects the sensitivities of the circumstances, and encouraging employers as to how they should deal with those set of circumstances. So that's, we're mindful of that in developing the communications.
I suppose it's also worth saying there are quite a lot of well-established networks of HR professionals from across businesses and the public sector as well. So, for example, the CIPD, the Chartered Institute for Personnel Development, some of the other business organisations would have HR practitioners forums and so on, and we've been engaging with all of them across the whole range of employment law issues, and we've been mentioning this as something that's coming in relatively soon. So you know, we are raising that awareness, and certainly, I mean, when the original right to parental bereavement leave and pay was introduced, the LRA produced a video, for example, or podcast that they had available on their website, and I expect them to do something similar with this as well.
When there was an update in the news recently about it, someone I know was going through this, and so I'd be very mindful of the deeply personal impact this has and how it's going to make such a difference in people's lives, and especially to women who have often had to do this on their own, and the acknowledgement of kind of the difficulty for the father or the partner hasn't necessarily been acknowledged. And I think as an assembly, we don't often have much at the moment that we're proud of or where we're leading, and this is a really important example of that. So thank you very much for the work that you've done on this, and it's something that you know, we can be proud of.
Yeah. And I mean, some of those personal experiences very much came through when the Assembly was considering the bill back in 2022. So, you know, that was very evident then.
I think around the communications as well, one of the other elements that we're going to move forward with is the NI Direct guidance that's there at the minute. We're going to maybe put a more holistic approach on it at the end, and we're in talks with some of our stakeholders who would be support sector organisations to maybe be a point of support at the end of that, where a person, maybe if they are going through it, they'll have something that maybe directs them to another service as well. So,
yeah, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Colin, thank you. I echo what has been said right across. This is really positive and really progressive, and seeing this change is really great. Can I just be, I don't mean to be completely insensitive on this, but I just want to talk about the money on it, because it hasn't been picked up. But it's said it'll cost about £1.5 million, so it's not, but there was a £4 million bid in the spending review. So what do the department expect the cost to be there?
So there are some different elements. There's been an administrative cost with HMRC to get the systems in place to administer that for us, so that's been a one-off cost. In terms of the projections about the total cost, I mean, at the time we were bringing the bill through the Assembly, we were basing some of our projections on, I suppose, full uptake. And we've
4 million comes from
for everyone who might experience a miscarriage and their partners. We've been able to refine those kind of projections over time, I suppose, with experience of the uptake of parental bereavement leave and pay and so on. So, our latest kind of central estimate of the annual recurring cost will be around 1.1, somewhere between there and 1.5 million.
The 3.5 includes. The 4 million includes maintenance costs, the HMRC as well, for them administering the system on our behalf. So we were expecting around about 3.5 to 3.6 with maximum uptake. And that's budgeted in, but that review that we talked about where HMRC will be demonstrating how many people are actually claiming it, we'll adjust that budget as we go forward, but we've budgeted for full uptake for this year with the view to review it once the Government Actuary Department do their report to show us what the actual outworkings were of it.
What's the cost of HMRC?
HMRC would be compensated by us. We would pay for it. Normally what would happen with the statutory payment is it would come out of the National Insurance Fund, but because this is a Northern Ireland only right, the Department for the Economy funds it.
Yeah, okay.
We give them a maintenance cost for running it on our behalf on an annual basis. We've given them around about 1.6 million to make system changes as well. That's under budget. That was originally over 2.5, but it's come under. And that's been the total cost for the changes.
But that was an upfront cost. The ongoing cost per year won't be anywhere near that level.
Money's not the reason you don't do any of this. Is the other thing to point out. I'm just trying to clarify what. And then the last really for me is you've got the in GB you've got the employment rights bill coming through. So which some of this they might follow. Have you had any discussions there that
Well, I mean, there has been a right to leave for pregnancy loss included in the Employment Rights Act, which got royal assent just before Christmas. That's an unpaid right, so we're not expecting in the sort of short to medium term that GB will move into line on this. So this will be something that parents in Northern Ireland uniquely will have, for at least for the time being.
I have nothing else for you, so thank you very much. This is, as has been said, really sensitive, and you've handled it and you've presented to us in a really sensitive and informative way, so thank you from us. Appreciate you. Thank you. Members, everybody, anything, comments, anything to add or want to say? No, everything from me. Thank you. I actually saw this when we walked out. I never thought of actually being here before I was in. I was reading my papers and never clarified. And I went down and my heart sunk when I read this and thought what could have been. So I really do appreciate the way everybody came about this. So thank you very much. Clark, is there anything to...
Just members, as members are aware, we have a new delegated legislation process. So the idea would be that the committee will now issue a call for views using Citizen Space. We'll publish the SL1 and the proposed statutory draft rule, which the department has kindly provided, and the relevant documents, which the department has also provided. So I'll put those up on the website. There'll be a 9-day period, 10-day period where stakeholders can advise on their views. If there are any, I'll bring those back to the committee. And then the members can then make up their minds on whether they're content for the SL1 to be made. But there's no need to make any decisions today. We'll do that bit. Though I think I can sense where members are. But if members are content, that's what I'll do. I'll just issue that call for views, if that is agreed, Chairperson.
Okay.
Agreed, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which is the SR chemicals. I'm going to pass this to Peter to run through, but this is the start. The department has laid a statutory rule entitled SR 2026/9 on the chemicals and genetically modified organisms. This rule is subject to a negative resolution procedure, and I'm going to pass to the clerk just to run through?
Yes, members. Members will recall this one. The Department previously indicated as the rule is cross-cutting in nature, it required executive approval. The Department previously advised that the executive considered the proposed rule and approved it on 17th December. So the regulations make changes to the Biocidal Products and Chemicals Appointments of Authorities and Enforcement Regulations Northern Ireland 2013 and the Genetically Modified Organisms Contained Use Regulation Northern Ireland 2015 in line with the Windsor Framework. So, a previous Westminster statutory instrument, the Chemicals, Health and Safety and Genetically Modified Organisms Contained Use Amendment, etc. EU exit regulations, altered the regime for the authorisation of the use of biocide products and genetically modified organisms. Under the Windsor Framework, it appears that this had to be disapplied to Northern Ireland and the original EU rules reapplied with some typographical changes, changing the reference to EU member states to Northern Ireland, and for the GMO regulations, a reference is also made to medicinal products for veterinary use, marketed in accordance with the Veterinary Medicines Regulations 2013. The committee considered the rule on 14th of January. Following a division, the committee agreed that it was content for the department to make the rule. The department advises that the laid rule does not deviate from the original proposal. So, Chairperson, can I ask if members have any concerns or questions in respect of said rule?
Yeah, Chair, just as indicated at the last time that this came up, I would be voting that we pray against this particular regulation. I outlined that reason why. Obviously, the continued application of EU law raises potential for divergence, GB to Northern Ireland, and also a lack of oversight when it comes to chemicals and supplies. So for those reasons, I will be voting to pray against the regulation.
Anybody? I'll be doing likewise that the original EU rules would be reapplied. I would be voting against that. Thank you.
Anybody else? We just take a vote on this and go through it.
So the motion will be, members, that the Committee for the Economy has considered SR 20269, the Chemicals, Health and Safety and Genetically Modified Organism Contained Use Amendment EU Exit Regulations Northern Ireland 2026, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory Rules report, has no objections to the rule. So those in favour of that motion, can I ask the show of hands, Chair? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, can I ask Gemma, are you indicating one way or another?
Sorry, yes, I'm indicating it. Yes, I just couldn't get unmuted there.
Okay, then, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those opposed? Sorry.
4.
Sorry, hold on. Sorry. This is the clerk. Sorry. So those in favour, one more time. Sorry. It's 1, 2. Can I ask members to indicate clearly? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can count. Thank you. And those opposed, there's 1, 2. So it's passed. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you. We move to item 11 then, correspondence, which is page 329 of your member pack. I am, if the clerk doesn't mind, going to fire this also to him to run through. Is that all right?
No problem, members. I will. My voice holds out. Yes. So I advise you as the. No, you're all right. You're okay. It's the index is at page 329. You can follow it there or just go through the items and I'll tell you the page numbers. So item 2 is page 331. Members are asked to note ministerial correspondence advising that the utility regulator is to make a decision on electricity guaranteed standards of service. NIA has also completed its post-storm AON review and is to accelerate its tree cutting programme. So is the committee, Chairperson, can I ask, is the committee content to note pending the utility regulator's briefing on guaranteed service standards in March?
Is that agreed?
So what this is about, members, was, you remember Storm Éowyn? Yeah. There were no payments, pretty much no payments. In GB there were. The reason is we don't have guaranteed service standards, so they've done a consultation. They're going to come and tell us about it in March. There you go. So item 3 then is members are asked to consider departmental correspondence providing notice of a consultation on a review of the approach to widening participation in higher education, including a focus on socioeconomic and geographic disadvantage, personal circumstance and care experience, educational learning needs, and justice and economic disengagements. So as members are aware, the higher education providers or universities are required to already provide a widening participation programme. And if you go onto their website, it tells you all about it. But this is the department consulting on widening that policy. So, Chairperson, can I ask, is the committee content to schedule a departmental briefing on the feedback to the consultation when we have it?
Yes.
Okay. Item 4, page 377. Members are asked to note departmental correspondence providing a copy of the department's progress report on the Tourism Partnership Board and the Tourism Vision and the Action Plan. Is the committee content to note pending? We're getting a tourism briefing in February when we'll have Tourism NI, Tourism Ireland and indeed Falch Ireland along. So if we're content to note till then. Agreed. Thank you. Item 5, Chairperson, is 391. Members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the Committee for Agriculture, Environment, Rural Affairs to the Department for the Economy seeking commentary on the impact of US trade tariffs. Is the committee content to note? Thank you. Item 6. Members are asked to consider correspondence from the Committee for Communities, seeking clarification on something that was talked about this morning, Barnett consequentials in respect of the £13.2 billion Warm Home Scheme in England and applications of the £1.3 billion in National Wealth Fund for housing retrofit. Is the committee content to write to the department seeking clarification on the above? Thank you. Item 7, page 397. Members are asked to consider correspondence from the Committee for Communities again, this time in respect of the Construction Employers Federation budget response and seeking commentary on cross-departmental work on the housing supply strategy. So again, is the committee content to write to Department for the Economy seeking clarification? Fab. Okay. Number 8 is at page 405. Members are asked to note a Construction Employers Federation press release on the infrastructure levy. CEF is calling for the infrastructure levy payable through the rate system, an average of saying that it will cost an average of £1.25 per household per week or £65 per annum. Again, committee content to note. Fab. Number 9 is a copy of the Youth Assembly's Big Youth Survey Report 2025. Is the committee content to note?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 10, members are asked to note a copy of the Competition and Markets Authority Draft Annual Plan 26-27. They're obliged to lay this in the Assembly and the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament as well. Is the committee content to note, Chairperson?
Is everybody good? Yeah.
Number 11, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Oh yes, they are disputing his assertions around the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So he asserted that it does not apply to Northern Ireland. They're disputing with him. So committee content to note will be copied in the response. Very good. Number 12, members are asked to note correspondence from UCAS announcing the expansion of application fee waivers to care leavers. Again, is committee content to note? Number 13, members are asked to note correspondence from a concerned individual on an ICO complaint, so the Information Commissioner, complaint in respect of the Crown Estates and Mines Royal. Is the committee content to note? And in tabled papers at page 55, members are asked to note departmental correspondence providing a copy of the minutes from the meeting with Cantor Fitzgerald in New York on 11th of March 2025. Are members content to note? Thank you. So, Chair, can I ask if members have any questions of any of the items of correspondence? Don't think they do.
So if we move to item 12, I'm going to pass back to Peter again for the Forward Work Programme. And it's on page, I can't see it, 460 on your pack, if I back to yourself.
So, members, what we have next week, 4th of Feb, is, what I'm suggesting is we just take clustering, the clustering strategy, and the briefing on grid connections, and put off the final session with the department on RHI. They just haven't come back to me just yet with the draft regulations. So if we're content to put that to 11 of February, and then what we do is we'd have our RHI deliberations and we'd have Dr. Wilson talking about employee voice. The department will not brief on the Renewable Electricity Support Scheme at this time until it goes to the executive, and they cannot provide a date at this time for the higher education financial needs analysis. So that's what we do. So 4th of Feb, clustering strategy, grid connections, and we're visiting Sony at lunchtime. 11th of February, we're in Lanark Way. These are the FE disability support provision services. We'll be visiting them for Skills for Life and Work. And we'll hear from Dr. Wilson, and we'll also talk about RHI. And then there's other things we'll do some other time. The department's indicating, look, they can't really give me a date for a budget briefing, but we're penciling in 4th of March is the best they can do at this point. In terms of UCAS and CAO, we've managed, I think, to corral UCAS, but we're still struggling a bit with CAO, but we put that in for the 18th of March. The McGee Task Force would like to come on the 11th of March, not 18th as shown. Now, also members, I've been contacted by Seagate a couple of times who would like us to come and visit their up in the Northwest. So, members, can I take your views? Would you like to visit Seagate in the Northwest? Might we align that with McGee Task Force?
Well, I think so. I think it would be really useful, and obviously they're a huge employer in the northwest and have, you know, huge impact beyond our region as well. So I'd be very keen to do so.
I think would be very interesting as well, because they are investing a really significant amount of money in R&D and are changing over, are looking at an absolutely new nanotechnology system as well, which I think is really, really interesting in a global context. How we operate all our computers, etc., etc. So it could be a real learning process for us as well about the future.
I think, Chair, it might also be linked to the enhanced investment zone, which we may know more about by the time we get to that point. So if I try and align it with the McGee Task Force, another trip to the Northwest, if that is agreed.
Everybody agreeing, yeah.
It's always a good day.
So if the committee is content with the forward work programme as amended, then is that agreed?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Then we're on just any other business. Anybody got anything to raise? No. So we're the date and time of the next meeting, which is next Wednesday, 4th of February, 10 o'clock in room 30. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Only 7 minutes late. Not bad. Not bad.
Committee room 30. Sound. 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 Committee Room 30, 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 Sound. Committee Room 30. 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 Sound. Committee Room 30, 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 sound.